Hello and a very warm welcome to Luke Blues Talking, the weekly banter about all things Stranraer FC. I'm Laurence Nelson. Slightly different tonight. Cameron Ritchie is on with me as he is so often, but we've got a couple of fans. Not that we're not all fans, but we've got Jethro, Bremner-Allison and Martin McLelland on. You've probably heard them along with us at some point in the previous It's No Easy, but we thought we're a few weeks into the season. Let's get the view of some of the fans. So, not surprisingly, tonight we're going to look back at that one goal defeat at Stirling Albion on Saturday. And just horrible memories of Stirling Albion playing, the music, the happy music at the end, the rain's bucketing down, and we've lost again. We'll also look forward to the Challenge Cup tie at Kelty on Saturday, only our sixth ever meeting with Kelty Hearts, and interestingly, it completes the whole list because we will then have played them in the League Cup, the Scottish Cup, the League, and the Challenge Cup. Anyway, there's one for the statisticians among us. So, good evening, everybody. So, let's come to Cameron first. Let's get the conversation rolling, Cameron. You weren't at Stirling on Saturday, but I have no doubt you've watched the highlights. I guess what's going on, looking at the stats on Saturday, we were actually quite well on top of Stirling for various spells of that game, not necessarily long spells, but for a lot of the game, but we just can't score.
I think that's exactly it. Frustrating, I imagine, is the word of the week. Looking at the stats, we had 14 shots, 7 on target. They had 8 shots, 4 on target. I mean, we're nearly double on both counts, but unfortunately, the one statistic that really matters is obviously the scoreline at the end of the day, the number of goals scored. And unfortunately, you pick up the paper on the Sunday morning, and it's Stirling 1, Stranraer 0. As I say, frustrating for everyone involved with the club, whether that's players, coaches, management, fans. But obviously, it's something that needs to be changed as soon as possible, I guess.
And Jethro, feel free to disagree completely, but is it as simple as that? Actually, in many respects, we're getting the performance right, but it's decision making, it's not scoring that these things are coming back to bite us.
So yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that week in, week out, and I listen to you guys every week with the podcast. It's been great, the new setup. But I would say that week in, week out is the same thing that's effectively being said. We're playing well. The cup results have borne out that we can win football matches, but when it comes to League Two, we're 5 games in, we've got 1 point, and we've got 3 goals scored. And the simple fact is that that is form that's going to have us near the bottom of the table. Now, I think that our squad is larger and stronger. And I think of a year ago, we were, our manager was leaving at this time last year. It doesn't feel like that at the moment. But I don't think we can continue saying we're playing well. I thought such and such had a good game because if we're not getting the points, then that means we're not playing well. We need to turn it around pretty quickly. And we've got a couple of home games coming up, and we need results now.
Definitely do. Martin, you even look at the league table, 5 matches in, and I think we can probably already discount Edinburgh City because if unless they are form nosedives, they ain't going to be anywhere near the bottom in a few weeks' time. In fact, they'd be challenging for the top end if it wasn't for the deduction, which has been upheld. We're lucky, and the likes of Clyde and Elgin are still there, but that luck can only keep you going so long. As Jethro says, we've beaten teams in from League One. We've beaten Rangers B. We just can't beat teams in League Two. What's going on?
Yeah, I must admit, I think that when it comes down to the physical challenge, we haven't really been up to it at times. And I think, especially the Forfar game, Edinburgh City in the league, these were games that we just didn't turn up. I think on Saturday there at Stirling, we did turn up, we did play well. I think there was individuals within the team that were being carried, but there were also some really good performances in there, and we're just going to turn it into goals. But I must admit, I did leave the game with that sort of the same feeling that I had after the Bonnyrigg game last year, and I did fear for the worst. There was it was taking a while for the highlights to come through, and the manager's interview took a while to come through. Another, there's something going on behind the scenes, but I did fear the worst, and I just had that. It was that feeling of gloom, despondency, mixed up with a bit of anger as well.
Yeah.
But it was a game that, and we went to. We didn't have that great a record at Stirling, but it was a game that I went to actually expecting to win, because I felt that we were a better squad, we were got better players. We did create the better chances. I think, did Josh have a couple of saves to make?
Yeah, the one where he touched
one off the bar,
the crossbar. Yeah. Probably the most notable one, I would guess.
But having said that, and I think the Stirling keeper had a few saves to make, but none of them. I think there was one that you could say that was a really good save. The rest were pretty much like back passes sometimes. I think Jamesy Dolan had that great chance in the first half. And if he'd lifted it off the ground instead of rolling along the ground and we'd gone 1-0 up, it would have been a completely different game. But something has to change somewhere.
Jethro, is it decision making? Martin's talked about our physicality and our lack of physicality, which I don't know if I agree with or not, but it would surprise me if we've got a lack of physicality, but given some of the players that we've brought in, I was going to make the point. I think it's about decision making. Like James Dolan's one's a perfect example. I think if he'd hit it first time, he would have scored. It's hard to be critical of him because I think he thought he was doing the right thing, but you could see his frustration afterwards. I just think that the same with Salou Touré with his shot across the face. He might have been better finding a man with a pass. Is it decision making really?
Yes, it could be blamed on that, and it could be anxiety from the results we've had so far and the desperate need to score and the knowing that that is the thing that's letting us down at the moment. I think it's a wee bit of guile as well about creation. I think that it's about those who we don't just rely on strikers. We need other people to chip in as well. I think physicality, for me, I think they fixed that. I think that under Agnew, we looked kind of weak and powder puff at times. I don't think that that's the case now, especially the new guys have come in rough and done at the back, especially Call as well and Jordan Stewart. I think they're all tough. You know, we're not an easy touch from that respect anymore. I think Dolan's getting better and better every game that he's playing now. He's starting to become I don't want to say, but the captain has been quiet, very, very quiet, I would say, and perhaps that's something we need to look at because I believe he was our top scorer last year, and
Yeah.
so we have a higher expectation of him. You know, if he'd come in as a new player, but we've seen him, we know how good he can be. So seeing him put in that level of performance at the moment is like, well, how can we fix that? How can we make him the player that he needs to be? Because if he's chipping in with his goals, then it's easier for the other guys, the strikers, to feel more at ease, and I think that'll take the anxiety off them, and the goals will flow. That's what I'm hoping, anyway.
Yeah, can I just clarify that when I said we run up for the fight, I don't think it's physicality. I think it's mentality.
Yeah.
Aye.
And I think Mark Russell's the perfect example. I think sometimes he becomes isolated out in the wing. And he's reluctant to put a tackle in. An absolutely brilliant player, immense amount of skill, but sometimes he disappears in the game.
Yeah, and I think Jethro's, I was going to say criticism, but I think it was constructive criticism because, as you said, we've seen what Markey can do last season.
Exactly.
So all we're looking for is how can we get him back to that. Cameron, we're 5 games in. Is there a danger that although, you know, after the first couple of games, the performance is there, but actually if you keep performing, not scoring, not getting points, there's a danger that then slips as well, that the optimism goes.
100%. I think it'd be naive of us to sit here continuing to say we're playing well, and expect the confidence levels in the dressing room to still remain as high as they would be at the start of the season. Inevitably, if you're not winning games of football, you're not going in with the same confidence. And that's not an intentional thing. That's just human nature. That, as I say, if you're not getting the results, that you feel your performances warrant, then inevitably your confidence is going to drop. I'm sure the players in true kind of footballer fashion, they would come out week after week and say, no, we're still going into it the exact same as we were earlier in the season. But as I say, just kind of human nature dictates that you don't get results, confidence drops. You do get results, even if perhaps
Yeah.
your performance didn't merit it. Your confidence levels go up, and you kind of you go in with a spring in your step, and that kind of belief that we can go on and get things. We've said in previous podcasts, and we've heard it here tonight as well. It feels like we list off, this player's had a good game, this player's done well, this player's done well. But obviously that's not translating in a match to 11 or 16 with the subs coming on. It's not translating to an entire team performance. It's not translating to a team performance that's resulting in points, unfortunately.
I'm wondering, Martin, one thing that I was saying to Brian on Saturday, I don't know whether I doubt it made it to the highlights. It might even be at half time, but one thing I admire about Chris Aiken is his happiness to change things, to change the team. And he's always been quite open that it's a 17, 18, 19, whatever man team. It's not just 11 and you're forced to bring on people. He's using subs and he's using the whole squad. I wonder, though, having watched them on Saturday, if that leads to a little bit of an issue with communication as a number of times. So it was quite obvious on the side nearest us in the first half that BJ Cole and James Dolan, there were times that the ball was getting played long and James was coming back, it was getting short and he was going long. And it was the same on the other side. I just wonder if, it's maybe nonsense, but I'm just wondering if the changing of the team then kind of upsets or prevents you getting a rhythm and knowing where your teammates are.
Yeah, there was certainly quite noticeable at times that there was a breakdown in communication between some of the players. But yeah, I must admit, I would defend him in his decision that it is an 18-man game nowadays.
Ultimately, yeah.
I think we've seen managers in the past very reluctant to change things.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there 1-0 down and he brings on a defender or something, you think, well, it gets really frustrating. But no, I think the squad that we've got, you've got to use everybody. You've got to try every sort of change that you can get out of it. So I think that's just something that, because it's virtually a new squad, I suppose communication is something that has to be worked on. But 5 weeks into the league and several games, you're expecting better.
And Jethro, I know we're in danger of focusing on what's going well, even though we've lost again. But if you'd looked at the stats from Saturday with all those shots and shots on target, and if you'd shown us that after, for example, the game up at Florfa, you'd have bitten somebody's hand off for that, but it's no resulting in an end product.
Yeah, and you can't say you're unlucky if you finish with nil.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the simple fact of it. We were obviously, you would say we were unlucky in the home draw because we scored a perfectly legitimate goal that was ruled out. But when it comes to losing 1-0, and when we talk about these breakdown in communications and attacks that are not going through as they should, which presumably they're doing, albeit in very little training they're getting at the moment because of the amount of games. I think it would probably do them well to have the Tuesday, Thursday to actually do a bit more training and work that kind of thing out. I think when it comes to the squad, he's got, as much as you talk about different people being picked, he's got choices, horses for courses based on the other teams now. So they can't really use that as an excuse. I think the issue we've maybe got, and you obviously talked about the left back there, and that was a good example, is when you play Ekrapon, I would say he's a much better, at delivering or passing the ball. So those balls to Dolan down the channel or to Sal that he can run onto, great. He set pieces, all that thing. But then you've got Cole, who's probably a better defender. So what do you want? We don't have someone who's like both of those things. So you kind of have to pick and choose based on who we're playing, and that's where it can break down a bit, I think.
I agree with you. It's a very good point because Finn is a player I love to bits, but I actually would rather have him further forward. So I kind of back up exactly what you're saying. Brian Martin and I were getting a bit of abuse last season because we kept saying Stirling Albion are the sort of team that we should be beating. And actually, I think on numerous occasions last season we said, actually, we should have beaten them. There's nothing there that particularly scares me. I don't see them as being a team that's going to be challenged at the top end of the table. I basically want you to go into the firing line instead of me, but ask you, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they had that wee spell where it was 5 corners and consecutive corners, and they did have a few moves that looked quite promising. But I think on the whole, they didn't really produce very much, and they're certainly not going to be challenged at the top, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, just to put that, you're right. They had that spell where we could not get out, and they had 5 corners, and I think at one stage it was 5 corners to 0 for them, but it ended up we had 10 corners to their 8, and I think I would struggle, Jethro, to say what either team actually did with any of those corners.
Yeah, again, it's the deliveries. We've got to work on it. You know, when I heard that Russell was re-signing, I thought he could go on and play for years and years with us and almost be like a Willie Gibson type character that plays into his 30s and can do all sorts of things with the ball. Ekrapont, we've talked about, great delivery. Dolan, good. So, and we've got 2 big brute centre halves who can attack the ball and will attack the ball given half the chance. I think they're brilliant, those 2. They really have been the shining light of this season so far, and the way they seem to be striking up a partnership, you know. So I'm certain if you can give them some chances, they'll be able to attack it. Stirling, I agree. I looked at them and just thought, and you see, like, I went onto their Twitter when they announced their team just to have a look at it, you know, and there's obviously a bit of disquiet there as well because people are saying about the manager and get Maybury out, etc. But then you look at the situation, you go, well, they've got a striker that scored more goals than our whole team in 5 games. So they may not be up to much, but if they've got a striker that does that, then they'll get more results than us. And as much as it's painful to say that team look useless and they're above us, how is that the case? Well, that's why, because they score goals.
I'll come back to you on one wee bit there. Ryan Shanley's goal, I think you or I could have scored it. The defence, you know, much as we've got the 2 great guys in the middle of the defence, we kind of let them off the hook. They basically slipped up the guys at the back with that goal, and if it wasn't for that game would have had 0-0 probably written all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, but you can't take away their overall their desperation to get a clean sheet, the way that they speak to each other and to the people around them, with the goalkeeper backing them up as well, who's really good. I think overall, in general, they've been great. And when we bear in mind that Ross left and we're obviously worried that that's a gaping hole in the centre of the defence potentially, to me, those are the guys that will keep us in the division because we'll be tighter at the back. Can the other guys contribute to get us up the table by scoring?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not all doom and gloom. Let's get Saturday out of the way to a degree and hear what James Dolan said at full time.
James, thanks for talking to us. It's not the nicest of conditions post-match here at Stirling. Fair to say that was a frustrating afternoon all round.
Yeah, well, another one. We're walking away without no points, but I feel like we've not even played badly in the game, just can't buy a goal. And I think they were in our half once in the second half, or in our box, once in the second half, and they scored a goal. So it's just not clicking for us just now. It's hard to kind of put a finger on what's going wrong, but
So you in the first half, you looked really frustrated. You had a chance down there, and we saw you going across to take the corner afterwards and bouncing the ball in frustration. I take it you thought you should have scored with that one.
Yeah, I think the boys I've got the ball. Corey's played me in, and I've chopped back the boy, and I thought the ball's in. The boy somehow cleared it off the line. So as I said, it's just not clicking for us just now. But listen, we need to get our heads down and we need to start getting points on the board at the end of the day.
How's the mood in the dressing room? Is it, you know, from the side it looks as if it's just needing things to click a wee bit. The commitment's there, the ability's there.
Everything, like, we're playing well. It's just in the final third we're not putting the ball in the net, and at the end of the day that's what wins you games. So I thought even defence, we played well defensively today. Looked good on the ball, looked sharp, but that doesn't win you matches at the end of the day. So we're putting the ball in the back end.
And of course, you don't score, and it's just one mistake at the back, and it's gone completely.
Yeah, I didn't actually even see what happened. I went down with cramp there, so just Another one of those days.
And you went down and you went off. Just tell us, are you okay?
Just cramp, I think. 99% sure it's cramp. But yeah, we'll have a look. Carson's looked at it. We'll see how it is Tuesday. Should be okay though.
You've played a few teams in the league now. I'm not wanting to dwell on the fact that we're struggling to get the points, but actually, in terms of ability against these other teams, there's not much in it, is there?
You know, that's how it is every year in League Two. I think it's a very tight, competitive league. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter who's the better team in the games, it's who scores the goals. And we're not doing that at the moment, so something needs to change. And it's on the players to put the ball in the back in net, me included. Front three, we're not scoring. So it's hard to put a finger on it, but we need to just get into the training ground and get back to it, man.
Main thing is, there's always next Saturday.
Yeah,
we go again.
Cup game, so looking forward to it.
James, thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
James Dolan there, and underlined, Cameron, what I've been moaning at you for years, how difficult it is to get a player to say anything really exciting when they've just lost. It's a miserable day.
It's difficult. I imagine when your team has won, and particularly if you've done something that's contributed positively to that result, more than happy to come out and speak to you. And then equally when it's a result that's gone the other way, it's difficult. What do you come out and say? Yes, we're disappointed. Yes, obviously we want to win. Yeah, well, I say the fans are disappointed, we're disappointed, etc. But we can't change it now. We now turn to next week. We'll look to do better.
Aye, you pretty much scripted it.
Yeah, you could almost kind of write that out for them beforehand in that situation. So it's difficult.
And by the way, while James, and fair play to him for coming and talking to us, while James was trudging out to face George and the camera, you had still an Albion player skipping about the place to speak to their guys, in spite of the fact that it was like one fine margin in the game. Cameron, one stat you'll have picked up on, I guess, is the fact that we had 9 players on the bench on Saturday, and I think I made the comment, and this was obviously before we lost, that actually it's 9 players, any of whom I'd be happy to bring on.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, I think our squad, whether it's as individuals or whether it's as a full squad, I think is probably stronger than it was last year. There's been times in recent years where it's felt like we've played one up front by necessity because we've simply not had that other attacking options. As we said, we've got kind of strength and depth at the back. You've got Docherty and Dunn fighting for right back. You've got Ruff and Reid in the middle. Looked like they could be a good, strong centre half pairing. Got Ekrapont and Call at left back. You've got plenty of options in midfield. I think 2 years ago, when James Dolan had left, you probably thought we need somebody to replace that creativity. Elliot Dunlop came in, did that. Elliot leaving, kind of the exact same scenario. We need someone creative to come in. James Dolan comes in. I look forward to Elliot Dunlop returning next year as they do alternate shifts. Mark Russell as well, another creative player. And again, we've got kind of forward options that look like they'll cause problems. But we also need to have forward options that look like they're going to score goals on a regular basis. And I think that's the issue at the moment. Not having it in front of me, I can't think of too many games this season where we've lost by kind of 2-3 goals. The East Kilbride game when they scored late on, I think that was 3-1, was it?
Yeah. And it didn't feel like a
there's
3-1.
that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it is those fine margins, it is those little things. And hopefully it'll be a case of we can turn the games where we're drawn into wins. We can turn the games where if we go a goal down, we get it back to get a point. Because obviously a defeat equals 0 points. 1 point, if you keep chipping away, keep adding them up, it'll hopefully kind of push us on up the table.
Funny thing, Martin, is that Cameron paints a pretty rosy picture there. He went through the squad from back to front. And to be honest, I couldn't disagree with what he said in terms of the squad strength, in terms of the players that we've got that are fighting with each other for those places. It's kind of like almost watch what you wish for, because I find myself now, the performances have been improving, but I'd actually now settle, never mind Saturday, we'll come back to Saturday in a minute, it's a cup game. I'd settle a weekend Saturday for us having an absolutely dreadful afternoon and the ball bouncing into the net off I don't know, Scott Ruff's bum or Lewis Reid's bum in the 90th minute.
Well, that's it. We've now got to that stage where we've given up in performance and just looking for points. But yeah, I completely agree with Cameron. I do think that we've got, despite most of the squad coming from the West of Scotland League. I think we've got a far stronger squad than we did last year. And competition for places, everything that you could hope for. We're just not all playing at the same time and getting the goals.
It was also good, I would say, to see Darren Lang back on Saturday. It gives us another wee option up front. And what I would say is I felt for Darren because he ran himself ragged he was probably only on for, well, let me just see from the stats. Darren Lang came on 73rd minute. So he literally had almost 20 minutes, I guess. Ran himself ragged, got absolutely nowhere because it was becoming apparent long before the end. Jethro, I don't know about you, but to me, we're just not getting anywhere today.
Yeah, but we can't think like that. Well, the players can. Anyway, we can, sitting there. It's not really going to help matters. But yeah, Lang was great, and he was good against Rangers, looking back at the match as well. Like when he came on, he seems to be desperate to be back and playing. I think he was similar to Elliot Dunlop in terms of goals last season, something toward 10, something around there. So in that respect, he's pretty much as we've got to find a way to get him involved as much as possible, because the simple fact is whether we need to look at a change of formation to bring in these other guys and bypass the midfield a little more, I don't know. But we need to find a way to get guys who are going to score goals on the pitch, and he looks dangerous and he looks really keen to make an impression now. He's been sitting for 4 months twiddling his thumbs waiting to go.
He is desperate to go. Jethro, you've seen well, what we've seen we've seen half of our opponents basically, and kind of what strikes me is I'm already suspecting East Kilbride are going to win the league. I didn't think they were miles ahead of us, and it doesn't look as if they're miles ahead of other teams, but they're getting the points, and it kind of looks to me as if there's a sort of inevitable. It's a bit like, we'll come on to Kelty shortly, but it was a bit like when Kelty came into League Two back in 2021. Felt a bit like that. But
Yeah.
out of the other teams you've seen, it's this sort of conundrum. I don't think there's anything to worry about. Equally, we need to start beating them.
Yeah, we do, absolutely. I think that the Elgin match is looking huge in September. I would say our fixtures in September are not particularly favourable. Spartans I've not seen, but I know that they've got a man in form of scoring goals. They're top of the league as well, right, or joint top. So that's going to be really, really tough, and it'll be interesting to see how they are. But Elgin looks like the big one we circle at home as well. We can't be sitting at the end of that game going, "Oh, we played well that day. We're desperately unlucky."
Absolutely.
It can't happen anymore. We need to get that mindset done, because then we're off to Dumbarton the following week, who, they're up and down as well. But this fact remains that they've been in higher divisions and stuff, and they're a team that are above us. Everyone's above us. Let's be honest. We're lucky that Edinburgh City, what happened to them. So it's excuse time is done for me.
Aye, fair point. We really can't come out of that game with Elgin, as you say. Boo-hoo, woe is me. We were really desperately unlucky. Cameron, final thoughts on Saturday. Did you really think at the start of the season we would have gone 5 league games with no wins?
No. I appreciated that there would be that period of time where the squad gels together, knits together. But then I think, and I said this it was right at the start of the season, if you can't be optimistic as a football fan ahead of the first game of the season, then why bother?
Especially after the cup. We thought
Exactly.
we were flying.
Yeah, good result against a team that had just come down for the Premiership. Like I say, you totally get your hopes up in that respect. One thing, if I can ask a question, and it's not a question I like asking, but is the manager under pressure? 1 win, 1 draw in the last 10? I appreciate last season we were basically safe, and it was kind of trying different things, etc. And they're not quite dead rubbers, but equally they didn't have the same at stake as obviously just now. I like Chris. I like Scott Agnew before him. Is the manager under pressure, or is it too early to say that?
I'll not fudge that, but Jethro, if you can go first, and then
Yeah.
we'll hear from everyone.
Yeah, from my perspective, no, not yet. I think they're the right people. I think that they've got the best interests of the club. I think that they've brought in the right kind of players. I think that we're playing a quality of football that was different from this time last year. It feels different. It feels more professional. I think the Chat Martin fellows seems to have brought something to it as well. I like having Stephen as part of the team as well. So, you know, it won't remain indefinitely. We keep getting 0 points. Of course, the pressure's going to go on. And I put a piece on the forum just to say what I thought of Saturday's game, and it was the first time you were starting to see comments to that ilk sort of whispering through, "Well, I'm getting a bit fed up of watching this and stuff." So, that's never a great sign. And anyone that's sitting with 1 point after 5 games and we're worried about this Lowland League and we've seen what can happen, there will ultimately become pressure. But for me, there's enough there that I would be happy to continue as we are and feel like things could still turn around.
Martin?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jethro there. I think in normal circumstances, you would say, yeah, time is limited for them. But I think there is shoots of optimism. I think that individuals are playing well. I think you're getting signs of professionalism. I think I agree. Martin Fellows is a great addition to it. I think there is positive signs, but how long can we go on like this? I don't know.
I've, obviously, all of us here have watched Stranraer for a fair number of years, and I think what I've noted more and more in the last sort of 5 years since being involved in the highlights is you watch the social media thing, and it literally can go week to week from, this is absolute murder, get rid of the board, get rid of the manager, get rid of everybody, to the next week, like, aye, we're fine, we're going to beat so and so, we'll be okay. I don't think that he's under real pressure at the moment. As Jethro said, obviously you can't keep losing forever and ever and ever. We're at the wrong end of the bottom league, and there's no longer the sort of luxury that East Stirling had for years of being able to finish bottom year in, year out, and nothing happened. If we went down, it'd be Lowland League West next year, which would be a different kettle of fish. It would actually feel as if you've gone down a wee bit further because it's most of the West Premier teams that are going to be in it. I kind of echo what you guys are saying. I felt when Chris and Stevie came in, before we knew about Martin Fellows, before we knew what the backroom staff were, I felt more confident. Dougie Samuel asked me at Spartans last December, midweek game there, what did I make of the new manager? And I said I had great faith in him because what I felt was, and with due respect to Jamie Hamill, one of his shirts behind me here, and with due respect to Aggie, I kind of feel there's more sort of grit, determination, and experience about the Aiken brothers. I don't think they'll put up with, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, I don't think they'll put up with underperformance for any length of time. So I've still got this confidence that actually they'll call a spade and they'll bring things round. But my God, 5 games without a win is testing them. And I did see all of the guys in the dugout. They'd obviously been in, had a word with the players post-match. You obviously don't know what happens in a dressing room immediately post-match, if it's a shouting match, if it's a quite considered word, what it is. But I did see Tiff, Ginge, Martin, the other guy who's coaching with them, all in the dugout at Stirling having a bit of confab. And it was almost like a post-mortem. And there must be an element, Cameron, of they brought in all these players. We've actually gone through them one at a time and said, man for man, it's a better squad than last season. There must be a wee bit of the management team thinking, Christ, what do we do here? It's just no gelling at the moment.
I think that's it. I mean, obviously, we're reeling off the players and kind of saying what they're capable of, etc. Obviously, the management team, they don't need to hear that. They know it better than anyone exactly what they're capable of. And it must be frustrating that you're getting the performances that lead to positive results in the cups, but then come the Saturday in the league games, unfortunately, we've not been able to translate For in Edinburgh, we weren't great. The other games we've played well, but unfortunately taken 1 point from those. And obviously, as we say, it's a results business at the end of the day. Just to stress, I wasn't trying to kind of poke the bear there or anything. That nobody would be happier than me to see both Aikens succeed, see the club succeed. And yeah, I think there is still that just about unwavering support. There is still that optimism. There is still that belief that the new signings will come good. And equally, I think there's the appreciation that, as you said, calling a spade a spade. I can't think of any games that I've been to, spoken to the manager afterwards, and I found myself standing there thinking, what game was he watching? We were dreadful, and he's telling us that we were brilliant.
Aye.
I appreciate a manager coming out and not necessarily echoing back whatever somebody's asking him, but equally coming out and saying that, yeah, we weren't good enough today, or look, we need to start putting these chances away, otherwise it is going to come back to haunt us.
And we've been there, Cameron. I remember Neil Watt and Stuart Miller's team putting 3 past Alloa at Stair Park, and I think it was Alan Maitland. Apologies if I picked the wrong Alloa manager. Come out at the end, and so it was like 3 breakaways. You listen to his interview, it'd be like, aye, okay, fair enough. Right, let's say, and I don't apologise for raising it, Cameron. I think any fans watching this will not be wanting us to sit here and avoid the fact that we're losing. Basically, you've got to address the elephant in the room. But let's have a break from the league. I'm not necessarily 100% sure I want to be losing every league game and winning every cup game, but Martin, it's maybe not a bad time to have a break from the league on Saturday.
Yeah, especially as the results have been going quite well in the cup. I think it'd be a good break for the players. That there should be no pressure on them, really. I think there's an advantage when you play teams from a higher league where you've got time and space in the ball and you can get to play. And we've seen that with the performance of the games that we've won in the cup. We've actually played well, and it hasn't been one that's gone in off somebody's backside, as you said earlier on. It's
maybe this week.
There have been games that we've won and deserved to win. So, and I think that's been evident when you played against good teams who played well. So I think it'd be good respite for the players and the manager. Take a bit of pressure off, and let's see how we can really play.
Jethro, I was almost thinking, as Mark was saying there, is that the issue? We've actually got players who enjoy more room to play against Ross County, Partick Thistle. Okay, I'm not necessarily putting Alloa and Kelty in the same sort of bracket as these guys, but they are playing in a higher league. Maybe it's just it's easier to play that kind of football at times.
Well, it must be. I mean, if we can, against Ross County, we were great. Queen of the South, beating them as well, and Alloa. All of these games, it can't be that it's just a coincidence that we're getting results time and time again. It must be that we've got more time on the ball, that they are stepping forward, seeing us as a lower league team that they can get at. But for me, the match against Kelty, especially as we've got a couple of wins in the competition, it's not important at all. I think we need to focus on the following week. I think we need to be in training and everything towards the Spartans. I think that we need to look at the guys who have played every minute of every game and think about giving them a break. We talked about we've got a really strong squad. I'm not sure what happens with the centre halves if the two of them, or if we have injuries there. Do we have a strong backup for that? I don't know, but I would personally look to the guys who were on the bench at the weekend. I would make wholesale changes with everything on the Spartans the following week. To me, we've got Motherwell B as our next cup game at home. I think that's the points that we would necessarily need to get through. I know you don't really want to rely on one game as such, but I think that is a good opportunity based on what we saw from Rangers B. So, great if we win, but I've got no importance on that fixture at all.
Cameron, it is a weird one because in a way I feel exactly the same as Jethro. I would struggle to say it's not important because I would be quite happy if we, I don't know, beat Aberdeen Ladies or whatever. I want to see us winning every week, with no disrespect to Aberdeen ladies. But aye, it's not the important one, and I'm wondering if that's why we're doing well, that the pressure's off to a degree.
I appreciate that obviously going into Football Manager cliche time, the league's the bread and butter.
Aye.
But equally, I would say that I want us to win, one, because I want us to win, but
Yeah.
two, and I appreciate it's not kind of came out so far this season, but I want us to win because hopefully that starts a wee bit of momentum. One win can become 2 wins, becomes 3 wins, or certainly an unbeaten run. So I acknowledge in terms of the priorities of the matches, but I probably wouldn't go with wholesale changes. I can understand tinkering with the team, which is totally understandable given where we are. But yeah, I want us to try to find our strongest 11 so that we can take that into the league game and develop from there. Equally with what's being said, I can't wait come the end of the season and we're toasting our Stranraer Cup double, to be quite honest. Scottish Cup, League Challenge Cup. We'll go up in the playoffs as well. We'll all be sitting back thinking, what were we talking about at the start of September?
And it's all still possible. And that is the impossible optimism of the football fan. And as you said, if you can't be optimistic at the start of the season, when can you? And let's be honest, if you're supporting a club at our level, whether it's Stirling, Albion, Stranraer, Kelty, you've got to be optimistic. Otherwise, you would just pack it. And I saw a friend of the podcast, Derek Hughes, who goes around in midweek. He comments on the Stranraer supporters page on Facebook, even though Derek's team is Dundee, he's a dark blue, but he goes to see games in midweek, and he was at trying to think where Cowdenbeath were in midweek, Cumbernauld Colts, I think, and a friend was slagging him and saying to him, "Can you not just get a Sky subscription and save yourself a bit of money?" And I still feel like going back on and saying, no, Derek isn't a television fan, he's actually a football fan, and it's a difference. I've moaned about this in the past, that actually, if you like your football, it's very different being there than just sitting. And let's be honest, I've sat and watched Champions League in midweek, but it's a very, very different thing. Cameron, I'm just going to come back and pick you up on what you said a minute ago, though, after that ramble. You wouldn't make wholesale changes because we did for the Rangers B game and it worked.
It worked in the Rangers B game, but it didn't carry on into the league game.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think the important thing for me is to find that winning formula, and obviously as quickly as possible. And in that sense, I think I'm not saying necessarily you go 100% strongest team if there are any players that are carrying slight injuries. Obviously, I wouldn't want to be risking them when we've got the more important game coming up. But no, I would want to get that kind of winning momentum, that winning formula as quickly as possible.
Martin, we're looking for only our second win over Kelty. We've played them, 6 times previously. Our first one was a win in the Scottish Cup during lockdown. They then come up into League Two and they recorded 12 points out of 12 against us in 2021-22. We then went there in, I think it would have been August. It was right at the beginning of 2023-24 in the League Cup. Lost 2-0. Surely we'll do something against them.
Yeah, I think they were a pretty good side in those games, though. And they were a bit, as you said earlier on, they were the East Kilbride of their time.
Aye.
Really good squad. I think the 2-0 game was that in the Cup.
Yeah.
They were already up. And they had the boy, I can't remember what his name was, in the wing, ripped us to shreds.
Was it no TV Daramola?
Yes, that's exactly who it was.
Yeah. We played him later on and he wasn't that effective, but he did rip us to shreds that night.
That night he was absolutely brilliant. And they fully deserved their win. And that's not to say that we didn't play well. So I'm not entirely sure what kind of squad they've got now. They're hit and miss at times. So I think we are due a win, hopefully.
It's almost like they've settled into League One. The money, I don't think is there anymore, so there's probably
That's right.
Got, but they seem relatively safe. Jethro, any thoughts on Kelty?
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously not seen any of them this season. I've keep an eye on the division. They seem to be struggling a bit. They've lost similar to us. They lose by the odd goal when they play Queen of the South East Fife. Obviously, we know quite well, so they've both beat them recently. So they're not in a particularly good place. I don't know what importance that they lie on the cup either. I think it gives us an opportunity. I mean, when I talk about making loads of changes, I don't necessarily think that weakens us. It could potentially show us that we do have more options than that we have at the moment. I just think we need to try anything, even if we're looking at formations and things as well. That may be an opportunity to do that.
I think actually that's an interesting point you've picked up on, the fact that this season, for the first time in many years, we could make a lot of changes, and actually it wouldn't necessarily weaken us, Jethro.
Yeah, we've got. This is the whole point, you know. We talk about this big bench of players that we've got, and so it should be we get to a level whereby if you have a poor game, don't expect to be playing for a week or two. You know, we've got someone else who can play, so that should be driving them on to a higher level of performance, and that's what I'm expecting to see over time. And as you've said, the manager himself, he's the first one to say, well, that's not good enough, so we're going to try somebody else. So I'm hopeful in that respect that we can sharpen up over the time by having that bigger squad and having the options where people know they need to perform.
Is James Dolan injured? Because he got off injured on Saturday.
He said he was fine.
Right.
The interview at full time, he said he was okay. I thought it was quite interesting the fact that he went down injured, and that was when they went up the right and actually got the cross into the score, because I thought James was really influential on Saturday. You could make the point that he should have scored, and you know what, he knows it. If you watch back the clip, I'm not sure if we saw it right through in the highlights, but when he went to shoot, then drew it to the right and then had a shot so he could beat the keeper. But by that stage, the defender came back. When James went across to take the corner, he was throwing the ball on the ground in frustration. He knew at that point, my God, I should have scored that there. So no, as far as we know, he's certainly telling us at 5 o'clock on Saturday night that he wasn't injured. So I'm guessing that's good news.
Why did he go off then?
Well, he took a knock. I don't know.
Yeah,
too rainy. I don't blame him. And I was in the stand with my pie, so I wasn't bothered about the weather. But
that's true. Yeah,
I had to walk across the pitch at full time, and that was murder. That's the exercise I got, and it was far too much for me, basically. Cameron, did you ever think you would hear Stranraer and the Junior Cup in the same sentence?
No. To be quite honest.
So I'm not sure how many folk I'm not sure how many folk have picked up on this, but this year Stranraer reserves entered the Junior Cup, and I've not spoken to Alan Jenkins, but I'm told the thinking behind it, and it makes absolutely perfect sense if it's true, is that the other teams in the south all get to play in the Scottish Cup, or else they get to play in the cup that could qualify them for the Scottish Cup. Stranraer, being a reserve team, don't have that, so what they've done is they've entered the Junior Cup, which lets them play against teams from out with the south, which they don't normally get to do. Now, even more bizarrely, it's now changed its name to I think it's the Scottish Communities Cup. And when I heard they were going into the Junior Cup, and you all know the sort of teams you get from the west and the east, the Junior Cup, I thought, oh, that's going to be a tough one. And obviously everybody says the south is terrible, the south is this, the south shouldn't be at tier 6. Well, Kilsyth Rangers versus Stranraer in the first round on Saturday, the full-time result was Kilsyth Rangers 0, Stranraer 6. So congratulations to Alan Jenkins and his reserve side. And in the second round, I wish Brian Martin was here. The second round, they're at home to Lanark United of Division 1. So we'll see what I'm saying. Maybe send Brian down, because he's obviously going to have a load of expertise on Lanark United. See what he's got to say about it. But that's a bit of good news to round off Look Blues Talking for this week's. Thanks to Cameron for joining me as always, and thanks in particular to Jethro and Martin. Good to hear you guys on. Hopefully you back on at some stage, and hopefully when you come back on, we've gone on a run of about 8 games without defeat. So
if you wouldn't mind, Laurence, we'd like to come on and be complimentary to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not as much fun when you're having to grumble and moan. So thanks very much for watching, everybody.